feel like this is my little moment to talk, but then it just rebounds. This is my loading live stream moment. 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 This is my live stream moment. This is my live stream moment. Okay. Hey, Kate.
Hi.
Hello. I messed up the link, so hopefully people.
I saw that it was scheduled for tomorrow, so I knew that that was in haste.
Yes, for sure. I'm like, I'm still a little bit tired too. I've been a little groggy, so.
You
Um,
were quite wiped out, weren't you?
oh, it was so hard actually. Um, right before this big recording session too, so it was very hectic. Luckily, I was out
Is
before.
that the did you share some of that was it the session that you shared?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
Hey,
God.
Jenna.
I was in heaven listening to that, Neil.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
I'm really
gorgeous.
happy to hear that. Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing time. The music sounds great. Should be out next year. You just have to go through all like the mixing and mastering and then packaging the record and all the licensing agreements and
Oh my goodness.
yeah, now it's like all that stuff because it's all original, right? So to put it out correctly, I had to do all the licensing agreements,
Mhm.
which is great because
Yep.
that means that I get the royalties and the mechanical royalties and writing credits and
Yes. Like, are you going through like SOCAN registration and all that stuff? Yeah.
I'm already registered well, I have to do this record, but I'm registered with SOCAN already because of my other record. But
Ah,
this one's like physical copies and like some of my stuff is now for this record. Like one of my songs is licensed to a film, but if I want to
ooh.
do any film licensing for this record, they're gonna have to pay and because I have to pay for the licensing and everything like that. So
Ah.
it's gonna be quite the experience. I'm excited.
If it was
Yes,
a
sounds very
chapter, if it was
exciting.
a chapter, it'd be a whole page.
Yeah. Welcome, Dennis.
Hello, Dennis. I'm
Hi,
just going to go mute for a minute because I'm
hello,
just finishing
Tatiana. Nice to
dinner.
meet you. I think I've seen you before.
Yes, I think it was a couple of weeks ago we were on a session together.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming. Maybe we'll wait for just another minute here. I was a little bit I kind of messed up the registration time and everything, so we'll kind of see what happens. People
All
move
good.
through.
I just wanted to make a little note though, what I noticed because yes, that session that we were on with Dennis, I remember you, Neil, saying how you were trying to get a little bit more of the male presence, and we kind of ended up being a lot of the guys, and then it was just me, and how the sessions kind of go a little different. And then the next session, it was just Layla and like all of us women, and yeah, you were right. The session goes a little bit differently. We still had our flow, but I can totally see how it kind of has a little bit of a different vibe. And now today it looks like we got a good mixture combination. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely what I noticed too. Was that the the conversations when it was like more men or more women, either way, it's going to have a different kind of energy, I guess you'd say. Just men and women. Like what I'm finding is just from experimenting in it is this age old thing where like men and women seem to communicate differently.
Yeah.
They have like similar values, but it's kind of just a different way of going about it, you know? So, um,
Yeah, I just want to fix everything.
yeah, there's a lot of like, on the male side, it will be like, say, less, it'll be kind of like more brass tacks almost. More like, well, if I were you, you know, talk. Whereas women, it's more like, this is how I feel about this situation. Which is great. Both sides are super important, and if there's not like somewhat of a balance there, then I don't think you really have an actual prosperous conversation.
Yeah.
So it's good to have both. Hey, Ellen. Nice to see you. Okay, well, we will see who else kind of pops on here. In the meantime, I'm just going to jump into this chapter. So, what I really like about this chapter, I use this chapter, like not just in my coaching business, obviously, like I use all this stuff in every business that I deal with, but I find this to be just such a potent sentence. So, we kind of had talked about just kind of reading the whole thing and then kind of going back and dissecting and kind of talking about it without like getting into the weeds first. So what I'll do is just read it and then start kind of getting this flowing. So what do I want my intake conversation, my long getting to know you conversation with the coaching prospect to demonstrate? I wanted to demonstrate my curiosity, my love of coaching, my ability to relate a story or case history or two about people I've helped through coaching, my ability to listen, to relate, to get to the bottom of things, and my desire to convert dreams into projects so that my prospective client will stop wanting things and start engaging in the process of creating them. Therefore, I really want to take my time when I first talk to a client. And if my prospect has a website, blog post, or a physical place of business, I want to do good homework prior to talking to this prospect. That demonstrates commitment. I always want to be the person who demonstrates what other people merely promise. I had many clients who could not afford me, who ended up working with me because they sold something or found a sponsor or benefactor or got a loan, etc. So I learned never to factor in my own estimation of their ability to pay. I leave that up to them. People become really resourceful when they desire something. People usually get what they desire strongly in life. And I can only cause them to desire my coaching by making an amazing demonstration of what it can do for them. So, I really like this. Let's go and do not share this for a second here. Because I think that this is, this beginning is really good. This kind of idea of like a demonstrative approach to coaching, and then to me also just to life. There's been many times when I have worked with other people, or I've heard people's kind of concept about how they want to succeed in life, and they talk about it, but they don't do anything about it. And the people I found that are really successful in life are usually demonstrating that success. That's what they're leading with is, hey, I called this person to see if this could happen, or I created this strategy, or I made this product, or I did this service. And through that, that's how they connect with people. So my first question to you, though, is kind of on the opposite side of that. Have you ever, like when you approach, say, a client or someone like that, how do you approach them? Do you approach them with this like demonstrative approach of putting things kind of forward? Or do you kind of talk conceptually about, hey, we could do this or that, or I've been really good at this, what would you say is kind of like your and I'd love like a story.
Okay.
Yeah, Kate. Bravery. Bravery in motion. Demonstrative.
I would say that I have experiences of both. Um, and on the occasions when it sounds like it's not consistent, 18 months ago, when I was, less experienced than I am now, I would do a bit of not leading. That's the right word, not leading sufficiently and being maybe a little bit apologetic, as opposed to this isn't about me, this is about them, and really getting into what they want and using one small thread of their conversation for them to focus on so that they can see in that conversation the one thing that they wanted, they got at the end of that conversation, whether it was a new thought or a new action or whatever it was. But what I'm learning is more leadership, more consistent leadership, so that there is no doubt that the person will desire. And it doesn't happen every time. And people understanding the value for themselves. I think there's a lot there. What value will that bring to their life so that it's not about cost, that it's about value? And when they desire strongly enough, then, as he says, they will make it happen. So for me to deliver to them an experience, not a concept, so that they've got something that they can go away with rather than the thought of something that they can go away with. Like I can build you a boat, or you can have a boat now and get sailing.
Totally. I love that, Kate, and I kind of want to key in on one thing because I think it'd be easy to make assumptions. So could you kind of unpack what leadership means to you in those moments? Because that's kind of like this blanket term we use a lot, but what are kind of the fundamentals to you?
Sure. To keep the conversation on track, because people want to share their story and they will go off on lots of tangents. So keeping it focused, and that has been my learning, to establish at the beginning of the conversation what the person wants. In this moment, in this conversation now, what is it that you want and why do you want it? And to spend a lot of time there so that when they go off track, then you can say, I noticed you're talking about this. We were focusing on this. What would you like to focus on? And then they can either say, actually, yeah, I've gone off track, I'll come back. Or they can say, yeah, that was useful, but I realize now I want to focus on this, so that it doesn't drift so much, because sometimes it can be a bit like a puddle. So leadership, keeping the conversation relevant to what they said they wanted it to be about, rather than how they've allowed themselves, how I've allowed allowed them to drift. So I think leadership, by keeping it tight around what they want, what that outcome is that they want.
Do you find that is what comes up for you when you're in that moment? Like where you see, oh, should I let them keep on going or should I reel them in? Like what happens for you in that moment?
Mm. I want the client to have the space that they need and to have the focus that they need as well. So that intuition piece about, to not interrupt, but they will always take a breath. And during that moment to say, I noticed that, we're talking about this and we were focusing on that. What do you want to focus on? But catching, because sometimes, you know, you don't want to leap in too quickly because they might just be processing. So yeah, so this isn't about interruption, but it is about using intuition to just capture once they've paused.
I'm loving this. I want to move on to you, Tatiana, but just before we do that, because I love what you're talking about here, um, how does that affect other things in your life? Like when you are, say, in other possible situations where you see uh, a potential that you can see a person wants something or a situation requires something, do you kind of impart those same leadership skills in other areas of your life, or do you kind of try to keep it to coaching?
No, I'll use it with my kids. I mean, I say kids, you know, they're grown up. But my son in particular, he's a big talker about the things that he wants or what he's doing or the work that he's worrying about. And then he'll go off and I'll be like, you know, just as a mother. So what is it that you really want here, Sam? Probably slightly more brutal when I'm with the kids. You said you wanted this, and now you're talking about that. What is it that you really want? So, but I wouldn't do that in a client call, but I would do it with my children.
Interesting. That just brings up one more thing that I would talk to Tatiana. Isn't that interesting how, say, trust and familial relationships, there's like a certain different type of trust maybe. Do you think that you could cultivate that same trust with a client to be able to just say like, what is this bullshit?
Well, yeah, yeah, that will be the next thing, starting in my next conversation, to be a little bit more forthright. I did it in, so I'm an HR director as well. And I did it in a conversation today. This is such a coincidence. So she was telling me her story about how things are going. And I was like, okay, so is it absolutely your dream job or is it utter shit?
Mm.
And she loved it. So she's like, well, actually, I thought it was utter shit, but it's working out really. Sorry to swear. But she said, actually, when I think about it, it's not. So yeah, maybe that's the knack.
That just makes me
To
think of that.
be more just me rather than thinking I have to be something. Just just be genuine me.
Hmm. It's not always easy, right? To really render yourself into a conversation where trust levels are such a big part of the whole.
Hmm.
To be able to be like, I'm just gonna let it all hang out here and really be the person or coach I am, that real prosperous person, right?
Hmm. I'm
Takes.
just thinking about something that Alicia said last week about, or no, it wasn't last week, it was one that I missed, and it's about the yeses and the nos. And if there is no attachment to the yes and the no, then just dive in,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not building a perception of you, they're experiencing their experience. And as long as they get to the point that they want to get to, somebody isn't well, you know, if somebody says, oh God, I didn't like the way she tackled that, that's their choice and off they go. Or if they like, do you know what, I loved how ballsy she was in that conversation, and then they become a client, but there's no attachment. So be authentic
Yeah, it
and
really
be
does come,
leading.
right? Don't convince, just demonstrate, kind of, and then see what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah.
Chatty hot. Thanks, Kate. That was fantastic.
Hello. So when I was reading this passage, what immediately came to me is what certain things I've been working on recently, which is the value equation. I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but it's basically like this is literally what he writes out, but it's just put it into more like a mathematical term of what they want versus your ability to deliver that, their trust in you to deliver it, divided by the time delay and effort then they would have to make to create the same result. And that's basically what you're offering to them, is this ability to show them that you have achieved this result, or you have had others achieve this result through demonstration, your own experiences. There's like, the multitude of all of these factors that create that trust within what you're doing with the client. But then the other factor of that, you then translate that experience into an experience for them that is faster, more efficient. They're able to come to the same breakthroughs within a smaller period of time. And that is the huge amount of value that you are literally adding to the whole equation that they can't just get themselves. If they did it themselves, it would take them however long it took you to do it. Like, you know, some people, it could take them 10, 15, 20 years to come to a huge conclusion, huge breakthrough in their life. Whereas working with you could be more of a, you know, a few weeks, and we're coming to these same huge breakthroughs. We're coming to these huge advancements in your life, literally getting you to move forward to all of those places that you want to actually be at. And that right there, that just clicks and makes them not even think about, like you said, the affordability. They'll literally find how to afford you. I just literally went through this exact experience myself of working with these people for a few months. They built this trust with me. They demonstrated over and over again that they could deliver exactly what they were talking about, that they've been working with entrepreneurs, that they've been working with coaches. And not just that, that they work with you to actually understand what you want to be doing, not just what you think you should be doing. And in the end, I actually did end up committing to them and putting down a huge amount of money to work with them on this very serious program to get me to the place I really want to be, because I've seen them now do it with multiple people. I've seen the proof, the value they've offered me in all of the other sessions, free conversations, events and meetings has now overshadowed the amount of money I am paying them to do this. So they built that up before anything was ever exchanged. And then it felt like when I did make that exchange, it was so worth it. I literally went and took money from every single place that I could because I didn't have exactly everything I needed. And I put my trust into this, and I'm like, I'm committing to this. They're committing to me. And that now has created this whole cycle of me putting forth more commitment to what I'm trying to accomplish and what I'm trying to achieve. And they literally said to me something that was like shifted me hugely in that respect of getting money, that in a certain perspective, if you have offered so much to them and you know you can actually help them, you are in a sense robbing them of the ability to advance to where they should be by not offering what you have and creating that exchange. Because it really, I've seen it in play so many times. A free exchange is a free exchange, but there always has to be an underlying element that actually helps you to move forward with whatever you received. And if there isn't that part of accountability, whether it's a monetary exchange or even just a personal exchange, the follow through doesn't happen as often, and it just becomes a lot harder because you're not putting behind it this actual motivation or just like the factors behind what should be pushing you towards achieving what you want to be achieving in life. So I just saw that as like, yeah, this whole chapter is that in, you know, simpler words of saying, hey, the value exchange between you and your client, what you are offering them in regards to the breakthroughs and the amounts of, you know, changes that they could be having through your work together is worth more than just money. And in the end, they'll be getting that money back with so much other elements because you'll have changed them into the person now that can make that money. Like already for myself, the investment, they've already taught me how to make that investment back within the next month so that I don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm out of money now. I'm lost here. They literally gave me a road plan of here's how you're going to get more clients. Here's how you're actually going to talk to them in a way that makes you feel good about getting those clients, not just you're getting money out of them. And like then showing me how I then translate that into my own work, and that's what creates the cycle of everyone actually feeling empowered and uplifted in the work that you're doing, not just how you are helping them, how they are helping you. It's a huge just actual exchange happening and the cycle, and it empowers everyone in the whole system. So that's at least how I'm seeing this, is that it is really that huge amount of how you personally invest, like with what Kay was saying, with your true authenticity, with who you really are, with your actual experiences, with the proof that you've gone through, and demonstrating that shows just so much more of how the whole exchange is valuable on more levels than just income and monetary. So that's at least how I'm seeing this, and that's like what I'm trying to do, at least in my life as well, is really create huge amounts of value so that no matter what interaction that I'm in with anyone, it draws them into wanting to work with me again. It draws them into wanting to know more about what I'm talking about or what experiences I've had to share. And whether or not there is a monetary exchange, it's more about that cycle that's starting to happen, that connection. And, you know, like in the previous chapters, time may go by, but creating that bond and that connection eventually can blossom into something, and you have no idea. It's something worth more than just your exchange happening there. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, especially the last thing you're saying. It's not, you're not trying to make a sale. You're trying to open a relationship. Then you like open that relationship up, and now you have something that has longevity to it. And there's like referrals involved, and there's a deepening of the relationship. I like what you were saying about the commitment through money too. Nick and I was talking about this the other day, actually, because I was just basically recapping on the last year that we've worked together because of the stuff that's been happening in my life, and I was just pointing out all these different kind of transformations, and there was a lot of them. And he's like, would you say that this, like, from all of the things that you're saying here, would you say like that this work that we've done together is worth $20,000 for a year's work? And I was like, honestly, it's worth like $1 million or more than that. I was like, really, how you look at any of this stuff is it's an interesting chicken or an egg concept, because, and it's all up to your level of commitment, like you said. Like, if you believe that through your work with someone, you're going to make $500 million from the work that you've done with them, which is what some people, like CEOs that work with Steve Hardison and stuff, have said, then paying $1 million to work for a year with someone is like a drop in a bucket. It's absolutely nothing compared to the value that you got out of it, that allowed you to accrue the mindset and then eventually the skill set, which brought in that level of profit or that level of value. But if you believe that you'll never make anything more than $19,999.99, then that $20,000 is absolutely too much money. So it's so much about what you believe is possible through your level of commitment. And the way that I was explaining it to him was like, this piano over here could be literally worth $1 billion. Like to Taylor Swift, this piano would be worth $1 billion, because she could write songs on this machine worth $1 billion. To somebody else, and have an entire career and travel the world and meet millions of people and produce an industry, and to somebody else, this piano is a piece of junk that they want out of their house. Right? So it's so much to do with like what you believe you can do with what you have and what you're willing to invest in it in terms of time and resources. And that's the same with it when it comes to people. So like what you were saying, you know, in terms of the money thing, and then also like what you're saying is that was a thing that I really loved that you said, that I believe that a lot of people have trouble with, and it leads to a lack of prosperity in their lives, is that they don't want to learn from other people. They want to believe that they are the teacher, or that they will win life by doing everything by themselves. By like, I'll just use the world to learn, rather than meeting someone and learning from them. Because it, just like you said, it shortens the amount of time before your next transformation. Like when I played piano, when I finally met a really, really good piano teacher who taught me jazz piano, I learned more in 1 year than in 10 years. It was an astronomical level of value, you know? because of meeting that person. So you're absolutely right. It's one of those situations where if you're willing to be a student, you're willing to realize that people can help you shorten the distance, and then you really do commit by applying your resources, and then believing that you're going to make your money back times 10, you're going to 10x what you put into it. That's really just a belief in yourself. And that takes work. That takes a ton of work. So I love what you're saying there, Tatiana. It's there's a lot of really golden things in there.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Layla, what, are you cooking?
Yes, I'm cooking. This is wonderful, and I love how you started the email. You had that quote from Napoleon Hill. That's I'm gonna tell everybody about all the things. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's basically like, I'm gonna tell everybody about all the things that I'm gonna do, but I'll show them first. And I love that. And that to me is like, you just hit the nail on the head, Neil, with pulling that quote forward for the chapter, because that is what it. Yeah, Tatiana, tell the world what you intend to do. Yeah, it literally. Neil called me because I have it written on a note card beside my bed. He's like, "What is that called?" Like, I don't even remember it. Anyways, because it's a practice to actually demonstrate. And I would like to share 2 experiences that I just had this morning, where I think I'm getting better and better at simply demonstrating instead of thinking about words like client creation, contracts, agreements, commitments, financial gain, taking all those things out of my mind and just showing up really presently. The first example is a lady that got on the phone with me to see about doing some birth coaching for her. And in those conversations, they used to be so different for me, where I would listen, I'd ask a few key questions, and then I'd sort of like go into my blah, 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 like my it was almost like a script of like, and this is what we'll do, and blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, I got myself into trouble a couple of times because I wasn't listening deeply enough. I wasn't actually providing the greatest service right off the bat. I just wanted the ticket. I wanted money in my bank account. So I admit, I was selfishly going for a paycheck, and it slapped me in the face. And so I've completely changed the way that I speak with people now in my first conversation, where I actually don't say much. And I literally start by just being like, so where are you at? And sometimes immediately it throws them, because they're like, blah, blah, like, I thought you were going to be the one telling me where I'm at. You're the person I'm calling who I think has all this knowledge and wisdom. And it's not that I don't have knowledge and wisdom, but you have it too. So you tell me what is inside of you, please. And let's discover right now what's going on for you. And in this case, the woman spoke to me about this, and she had this fear, and fears always come up. Like, birth coaching is very specific in that we're talking about a very big thing, and there's a lot of fears. So this fear came up, and then that fear came up, and then, and she keeps talking and talking, and I'm saying very little, and I'm asking some questions. And she says something that I've heard often, which is, I just feel like if I make a choice to go this way and I don't get the results I'm looking for, I feel like I might kick myself in the ass for having made the choice. And I was like, huh. And I didn't say anything, and I listened, and something, like Kate was saying, something like intuitively, I'm like, this is the moment where I need to now demonstrate what I do. Here's the little gem. What is this gem? So I'm listening more. And then I realized she was creating this like binary where she was saying, if I choose something that I'm really aligned with, that's super brave, super courageous, might offer me loads of transformative experience in that I'll liberate myself into birthing freely in my home and blah, blah, if I do this and heaven forbid something goes wrong, I'm now going to say I'm going to kick myself in the ass for that. And so maybe I shouldn't decide this. And I realized, oh, you're presuming what is making, so this is what I asked her when it clicked. I was like, wait, hold on a second. Let's say you chose the other way, which I'm like, every woman has a right to their choice. I'm not there to try to like evangelize, like you have a right to your choice and you need it to be really in support of you. So what happens if you were to choose the medical management system and something went wrong? How would you kick yourself in the ass in the same way? What is going on there in you that's making one way be that you're not going to kick yourself in the ass, and the other way it's like, what is going on? And I just asked it very open. That woman got so uncomfortable. Like she started like shifting around her seat. She's looking at the camera. She wasn't saying anything. She's like, oh, she's like, like, are you going to say anything else? Because I don't want to say it. She had so many things that happened inside of her being. And I was like, I wanted to clarify. I'm like, oh, fuck, maybe she didn't hear me right. I was like, did you understand my question? Because it's like, I left a gap. I'm like, did you understand my question? She's like, what was it again? I was like, okay. I'm like, in my own mind, I'm like, yeah, here we go, and I gently said it again because I knew there was something big there. She was about to stumble. Like you were saying, Tatiana, it's like we sit there and we create space for people in the first conversation that's going to blast through things that they've been working on for like 15 years, and I sat there and I was so gentle because I knew it was coming, and she spits out, I think it's just a lack of confidence. And I was like, oh my God, you just confidently moved right through your own perceived lack of confidence. And I told her that, I recognized, I'm like, let's celebrate that you were just so confident right now in speaking to your fear or lack of confidence, Her entire, you could see her whole, she sat up taller, and there we had that moment where it was like I was able to demonstrate in that moment what I do. The rest of, I didn't even talk about the details of the service or anything. That was just like, I'll send you that in an email. Does that sound good? She said, absolutely. So like I love that it's about demonstrating the experience. You're demonstrating the experience, and I think the clarity piece, like seeking clarity, like in those really moments, that was my other example, and I'll make it really short, where I'm offering a training program for women who want to work in the way that I do and in birth. And I've gotten some interest, and this one lady message, this is all message, not even conversation, message. She says, I don't know, I'm interested, but I thought it was something else. I thought it was more hands-on. I don't know if I'm interested. I've already taken training. I said, oh, my first thought in me was like, ah, shit. And I was like, well, wait, maybe I'll just like stay open. And who would have thought? And then I said, I typed to her, I said, that's so exciting that you've taken training. I'd love to hear more about it. And then she said, well, actually, and then my own presumption was wrong. And even her own presumption about what I was giving was wrong. She had taken training, but it had a lot of gaps, and she didn't feel like it really set her up for what she wanted. And I was like, aha, well, those are the gaps that I'm trying to fill with this, which is true. It was like I see the gaps, which is why I'm trying to like fill them. So then she agreed to have a conversation. So I will look forward to that on Friday. But just those examples of like, we can, when we enter those conversations, if we're not listening so deeply and truly like embodying what we do, we're going to miss the opportunity to discover with that person what they actually need, you know, and whether or not, like Kate, you were saying with the puddle, it's like sometimes I just let them have their puddles, and I'm like on every word in my own mind, slowly, you know, and creating a deep sense of clarity in me. And then that little gem pokes up. I'm like, oh, let's clear up this fucking puddle because you've made a mess. Clean, you know. So yeah, anyways, I love that. And those are my examples.
Those are fantastic examples, Layla, and that is such a big shift for you right there, you know, in what you were saying, like how you started off just kind of being like blah blah blah, like giving the contracts and giving kind of the specifics and all this stuff that actually kind of alienates people because it's so standard in our society. It's to be like, let me tell you about all the things I'm going to do for you, you know. Whereas that's not really not necessary. And just one thing I wanted to point out that I think is great as well that you're saying is it seems to me that there's kind of like this formula that's emerging more and more, I'm finding through conversations with other people, is that assumption equals poverty, you know? Clarity equals prosperity. Like, as soon as you make the decision in the moment to like say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. Could you unpack that? Can we get curious about these words? I don't understand. And I think it's probably because we have a lot of there's a kind of there's like a baked in nostalgia within language where we hear a word and we think we know what that word means because of how we've used it in previous situations. So we just go, like with Kate, it's like leadership. You know, I'm like, oh, when I think about leadership, I think of the president, or I think about my teachers, or I think about some stuff like that. But is that really what's happening? Is that really the way she's talking about it? Is that really the way that we could talk about it? So it just creates these connections through kind of inspecting assumption in the search of clarity, and how that seems to bring us all together. Like language itself has all this assumption built into it. So it's, yeah, go for it.
And I just want to say, yeah, with the lady where she said first was very like, I don't want to do this. This isn't what I'm looking for. I've already done this training. I actually wrote a message first and didn't send it, that had me like explaining why it was valuable, you know, like because I had assumed, you know, so I was explaining all these value points that I thought were like, you know, blah, blah. And then when I realized that I didn't actually know what she meant, you know, I realized that I had assumed. And when I sought clarity, she answered me back with totally the opposite of what I didn't even have to explain the value points. She did it herself, you know, like that was so surprising. And so, yes, agreed. Clarity is prosperity, because like it made her also be clear about her own. Maybe she felt at first, yeah, I've already done this kind of training, I don't want it. So she was also in a state of lack of clarity too.
Yeah,
She was assuming as well, you know. And I think when we make those assumptions, we then we're almost defending ourselves all of a sudden, which is so poverty mindset, you know, where it's so a lack of trust in prosperity, where we're just reaching at straws, or I'm not good with expressions, but you know what I mean.
Grasping for straws.
Yeah, those.
Yeah, it's that whole let the truth do the heavy lifting. Like if you just seek clarity, the truth will emerge and the truth will do the work, which is like the real thing that I think is coming out of that. That's awesome, Layla. Ellen.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I was inspired to speak when I heard you, Layla, because what I found is extremely valuable about listening is what's called deep listening. Not just like an expression, but more of a concept of deep listening. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but there's going to be a free workshop tomorrow and the following Thursday. I don't know how about the hours are for you. It's a few hours before Domino, and I'm put the link to the Facebook event in the chat now. I know one of the speakers, and I can really recommend Mavis Khan. Because I think that goes exactly to what Layla was talking about, like between two people, you can create a barrier between the connections. And the barrier could be in both people, but as soon as one person, the leader, is opening their connection, the other person's ability to open from their side is enhanced. And the barrier is, I can't remember all of it, but it's like distractions. How am I distracted by things around me that takes me away from my listening? My thinking in the moment, all the solutions for this person. What am I about to say? I already know this. Why are they telling me this again and again and again? All my judgmental thinking about what they are telling me. That's what creates the barrier from us to be totally open. And what's so amazing about this is that it's not something that you do. It's more a state of being. When you have opened up that contact, that connection, it's amazing because you're not supposed to speak rather than, like when as Devon says to improve the silence. And I'm going to love that quote for the rest of my life. But you know that you only speak when you feel like you have to. You speak out and then you pull back because your main role is listening. And like Layla says, all our assumptions are often getting in our way for our listening. So, and for how we speak. So the more we listen, the more we get to know that person. And the more we listen deeply, it's like that connection. That this is my own experience, but I know a lot of other people have it as well. And it was just what Layla explained, I think. When I sit there and I get these thoughts about, yeah, I wonder if she has been thinking about this solution. And then I can move away from them. But suddenly the client is saying, yeah, I have wondered about this and this and this. And it's almost the exact words. It's almost like she can read my mind somehow. And I'm not going into what's this and what's that, but I believe that there are some connections between us, some energies between us that we can restrict or we can open up. And the more we open up, the more influence we can have on the person we are talking to or connecting with. So it's really more connecting with than talking to. And something that came up in me is I've experienced for myself that people that I like, it's much more easy for me to listen without any anything that is interrupting. I'm more open to listen to people that I like. If there's something about a person I really don't like, then I close. And then it hit me like I like people when I feel they see me. And seeing or hearing, when I feel heard and seen. So if I'm, as a coach, can be open, so open, really open, to see and hear, that will be an experience for the client that they might remember. And that may be what makes them open up for themselves and for their own wisdom and see more results for themselves more than anything else.
I
And
agree.
I would just like to end by sharing this simple model from Michael Neal about coaching.
Nice.
Show up, be yourself, respond to what happens.
Nice. That's really, I love that, Ellen. I think that one of the things I love about coaching in general is that to me is like the formula for prosperity in general. Like obviously it's an amazing way to work as a coach, but it's also like that's how I feel when I show up to the recording studio. That's how I feel when I show up to a gig. That's like how I feel when I have to meet someone for business negotiations. That's how I feel in money negotiation situations. Like if I'm thinking, oh, I gotta have a strategy, I gotta go in there with a certain set of words. I might even get what I think I want, but I could very much manipulate the conversation in such a way that I don't get ultimately what I really could have had that's beyond my conception. Like I could walk into a business meeting thinking, okay, I'm going to get $5,000 for this record. Yes, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get $5,000 for this. And then I speak in a way that eventually gets me the $5,000, and the person I'm negotiating with goes, great. They didn't realize they could have gotten 8. It's because they negotiated so hard for 5, But if I'm open and curious and go, hey, wait a minute, I think that there's more money back here than I think there is. I could just tell from the way this person is reacting to what I'm saying. Or not even talk, and they go, you know what? We're thinking we could give you $8,000, or something like that, just by going in open rather than going in with like a model of how the situation should end up. So there's less of a desire to control. Another thing that you said, Ellen, that I think is really great that Ankush talked about that I think is along the line of what he was talking about, deep listening, and I thought that this was really beautiful. And he was saying that when he started working with Steve Hardison, he started talking with Steve Hardison about how he realized that he didn't listen to his wife enough. And he thought that was pretty crazy because he loved his wife so much and he felt like he listened to his wife a lot. But Steve Hardison showed him that there was many situations where even though he loved her, he still let his own assumptions, his own thinking, his own stuff get in the way of just being really, really present with this person that he loved. And I thought that was really interesting because I feel the same way. Like, I feel like I listen to the people in my life that I love, but I also realize that it's like a mountain without a top. Like, you can always listen deeper. You can always be more present. You can always be just more clearly trying to hear what someone says, especially like if you said if they say it to you over and over again, rather than thinking, oh, I've heard that a million times, thinking, okay, this is coming to me again from this person that I love. What are they really trying to tell me? And not letting those, because like you're saying, those barriers, it's like the barriers are just as strong with the people you love, but they're almost invisible. Like, they become embedded into the relationship in such a way that you don't even notice that they're there. You're like, oh, I'm definitely doing the best job I could. But when someone like pulls up the veil and shows you that even with the people you love, you still are not connecting and listening as deeply as you could, and how powerful it would be if you did listen. That's what I learned from Ankush. So I thought that's what you're saying really brought up for me. Yeah, Ellen.
And just a comment on deep listening, because one of the most interesting things about deep listening is when you start deep listening to yourself.
Yes, totally.
You can deep listen to everyone, and when you start deep listening to yourself, that's when it becomes really interesting. And to me, that's a whole new level of understanding myself, and I still have so much to see there. So I'm very much looking forward to learn more about how to deep listen to myself, because I think if I master that skill, then it will be even more powerful when I listen to others.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, again, you're talking a lot of gold here, and a lot of things that to me are really part of the formula of the prosperous person, because that voice that you're talking about and that listening to yourself, and I'm sure maybe you find this, and this is what I find. I'd love to know what other people think about this, but sometimes when you're in a conversation or you're doing something and that inner voice says something so quickly that it's barely perceptible. It's just like, it's like the wind. It just kind of flows through you, and there's a moment you can make a choice to go, hey, what was that? And pull it back and really like open it up and go in there. Or you can say, it's okay. I don't have enough time. I need to do this or that. Or maybe like someone's talking to you and this little tiny glimmer comes up and you're like, whoa, should I talk about that? Or like, should I at least hold on to that? You know, maybe it's important in this conversation, or maybe this is an important thing to remember about this person. That to me is the golden gates of prosperity. Like, they're tiny. But if you can open them up and go in there, it's like Alice in Wonderland when she goes through that tiny door. It's like that whole thing, and there's like a whole nother world on the other side of it. So I really agree with you, Ellen. It's engaging with your voice helps you engage with other people, and then I think on a really deep level, it helps you to engage with the universal river, the natural flow of prosperity. Because it's there for you anytime you want. It's literally speaking into your life if you want to hear it. Okay, so I'm going to keep going because I think there's some other great things to talk about in this book. We're doing great. This is fantastic. So this is another thing I want to just talk about here. That I just want to pull out of this. It's also because of something that I think it's Kate had said it. Tatiana had said it. So I just want to zone in on this thing. So he wants to demonstrate how he can that he has a desire to convert dreams into projects so that my prospective client will stop wanting things and start engaging in the process of creating them. Now, I think that this is seriously some of the most powerful stuff, is that like little sentence right there. Because for myself, with dealing with clients, or dealing with or working with, negotiating with clients, and other people in life, the desire to want seems to trump the desire to engage in the process of creation. There's like, and the desire of wanting, it seems to lead more to stagnation. Like stagnation, overwhelm, feelings of inferiority. They all come from this want, which is so much different than this desire to create. Like when I feel like I'm creating, I'm not wanting. I am making. So that was just a little thing that I just wanted to point out, that we had kind of like, there was some talk about what clients want, and I think that this ties into the fearless coaching thing, and also into personal prosperity and fearless living, is to be able to see what wanting leads to, and then exchanging want for creating, and then building the steps to creating what you want, starting at like very much like step one. So that's something for me too. Like, I want $1 million. So that's great to say I want $1 million, but how am I going to create the steps from right now to make myself a millionaire? What is that actually going to take? What's the process I need to engage in to create myself into having the life and the money of a millionaire? What does that actually look like? The other thing, and now I think that he really does a great job here of actually explaining how to do that. Because he doesn't say, I want to have a client. Now he goes, therefore, I really want to take my time when I first talk to a client, and if my prospect has a website, blog post, or physical place of business, I want to do good homework prior to taking to this prospect that demonstrates commitment. So it's all that like background work. So I just want to maybe talk about that for a second, because this has been something that's happened in my life personally, where I just did not do enough background work on my clients, on my prospective business partners, on the people in my life, on businesses I want to engage with. So there's this like, there's the being in the moment thing, which is super important, and engaging in the moment. Then there's all of the actual background work to flesh out your understanding. And I have failed at that before. And so I'd love to maybe hear I would maybe like to commiserate in that feeling for a moment, and see if there's been, if that's happened in this kind of group of people, where you have not done the amount of work necessary to understand a situation, and then maybe even possibly blame the other person. Ellen.
I don't have so much experience in this field, but I would really like to know, when people are sharing, if they also can tell me how they see that background story and that background check is, how is that important?
I'd like to hear it, see if anyone's... Kate.
It reminds me, thank you, Ellen, for asking this. It reminds me of something I think lots of us have listened to, the Inside Out Evolution. And I think that's where I've heard it, that there's, and I just can't quote it word for word, but it's the whole exploratory thing. So even if you haven't done background research before a conversation, in the conversation to keep getting more and more clarity. And the example that's used was the coach was in a conversation with the guy who was saying, well, I'm a really great carpenter and I want to do this, this, and this, and I want to make my business this, this, and this. And he's like, at the end of the, had all this strategy on how to create this carpentry business. And at the very end, he said, oh, could I take your name? I forgot to ask your name. It's Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not word for word, but it's sort of the gist. So even if you don't have the information before, to keep asking and not assuming that you think that you know, and I think when we're on the receiving end of it, we don't feel that we're being, it doesn't feel like an inquisition. We just ask a question and so we respond. Because I know that sometimes I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm just being too curious, but actually it's very rarely received as being that. People just hear a question and then they just answer it. But for him to, in that a funny example of what could have been a situation, to keep being curious during the conversation to help you know who it is that you're talking to and where are they right now, and have they already, that whole what do I want versus what am I creating. And sometimes people have the thing they want, it's just that they can't see it, or they're seeing it differently. So I think it goes right back to the depth of the listening and the depth of the curiosity. I was going to say depth of the questioning, but I don't think it is about depth of questioning. I think it's just right back to depth of listening. And then, as Layla said, then the gem will come. And in that made up thing that could have been real, oh yeah, did I mention my name was Jesus? That could have come up a bit sooner. And that would be the gem.
Yeah, and I want to extrapolate on that one, because I think that there is. I'm gonna steer the ship somewhere else in a second here, but I found that's great that you bring up that quote, Jane, or Kate, as Jane. Jane's not here, because I found that quote was very much him kind of saying, as a coach, he was kind of saying two things. One of them, what he was saying was like, we all, even Jesus, don't believe that we have some massive impact on the world that is available to ourselves. So even Jesus, prior to his maybe spiritual awakening, he wanted to build the best carpentry business he could, because that's what he thought was his peak skill set, So he goes to coaching thinking, how am I going to put together the best carpentry business I can, because that's what I'm good at. Little does he know, he's actually a terrible carpenter in terms of his relation to his actual, destiny, Like, Jesus could be the best carpenter in the world, but in terms of being, balancing that against being the Son of God, that's very, one skill set is very powerful, one skill set, sure, powerful. But without the desire to, like you say, ask some clarifying questions, that person may never find those personal gates, those gates of prosperity. Because they don't even know who they are yet, and they're not listening to that inner voice like you're saying. So I definitely agree that in the moment and in the conversation, staying open and staying curious is important. So I'm going to go back to this question, though, because I think it's important, and I think maybe this is a little gap that we're seeing. The reason why I'm talking about the extra work of learning about people is because you would be surprised how quickly you can gain trust from someone when you do some homework about them. So to kind of give Ellen an answer to kind of why is it important to do work. Like one of my clients, they were telling me like who they were. Like, oh, I do this kind of work and I do this kind of work. And I was like, oh yeah, for sure. I know. I looked at your website and I read these articles from your blog. You know, and then I checked out your music and everything like that. And they're like, really? And I was like, yeah. And it's like, you were talking about this, and I just started talking about it. Like, I didn't look at any of the forms. I just started talking about what, you know, what they had said and what they had done and how they conceptualized their business. Right away, they wanted to work with me. Right away, they were like, wow, like, you took the time to get to know who I am, and you took the time, like, you remembered specific things about my music and about my articles and everything like that, and now you're bringing them up in the conversation I'm having with you. Like, you care. Like, you're not only here and present with me, but you're also present enough to learn about me before we did this session, you know? So you're not just here to kind of take my money, maybe it's like that kind of thing. Like, you're just another client in my Rolodex kind of thing. So that was the reason why I wanted to talk about that. But the reason why I wanted to talk about the opposite of that is, like, have you ever bought something that you didn't do homework on, or like you ever got into a business but you didn't read any of the reviews, or you ever go to a restaurant and not ask any of your friends if you've been there, you know what I mean? And then been like, this food is junk, or like, this product sucks, or, you know what I mean? And didn't think to yourself, wow, I should have done a little bit more homework there, and how that would have been valuable for my personal time and everything like that. So that's what I was trying to kind of get at. That's what I was trying to pull out of people. Ellen.
The reason I ask is partly because I'm a teacher, school teacher, and when you get a new student, a new pupil, and sometimes you prefer not knowing too much about that pupil because it will affect how you meet them. So sometimes you would like to meet them just open-minded and just for seeing clear and fresh. Who are you to me? You know, start really from scratch. Because if you read all the papers and all the things they've gone through, maybe behavior issues and stuff like that, you can get those things in your barrier when you meet them.
Yes,
and Kate's example was just actually that, because if we have a Jesus among us right now, then we won't know about it. And if they come to us and we read and if Jesus had a web page as a carpenter, then we would read that. We could go into that trap, believing that this is what Jesus want to talk about. This is really what's important to Jesus before we even meet them. And then we will have these lenses on what we think we know already. And at the same time, I see your point, Neil, just with what I said a few minutes ago about being seen, being heard. When you feel seen and heard, then you can open up and trust better. So to me, it's like adjustment of the balance here, just like you are tuning an instrument of some sort, using your instincts. I think it's a good thing to be aware of every aspect, and then just maybe not write a recipe of this is how I'm doing it all the time, but maybe feel where are the waves and where can I surf them from time to time. So that's how I get like more like a navigating or what's correct and not correct.
No, yeah, I absolutely agree. I kind of feel I hear what you're saying, and um, kind of the fear. I understand what you're saying, and I find that the fear, say, of for myself personally, of my thoughts being infected by what I like read about people or something like that. Like, for myself at least, my mind is my own mind. So even if I read a whole bunch of things about Jesus and his like carpentry business, I wouldn't go into the conversation with them being like, okay, right, so we're putting together your carpentry business. I'd still be going into it saying like, so you've done a carpentry business. Is that what you want to speak about? Is there something deeper here? You know, and then be looking at the edges of the conversation to see, you know, what we need to do. How are we going to wade our way in here? But just kind of knowing what has happened with the person, like you're saying, is helping them be seen and heard, because it shows just like, even if anything, just like a level of effort. And I hear what you're saying about students in school and how that could affect you too, because academia and reports and people's file and stuff, there's a lot of dependency on that in scholastics, because, well, you have 30 students, or you only have what, like the history of their behaviors or the history of their grades, and a lot of people are kind of delineated into categories based off these metrics, right? Um, and that's like, it's one universe. It has its own set of laws, that kind of like filing system and how we deal with people systematically, you know. Uh, and it's cool to know, but like you're also saying, meeting them fresh is so important. So I find having both at the ready, kind of, then you can pick and choose, kind of like, what is it? Then you can pick your own adventure, kind of thing. Choose your own adventure. Do I want to incorporate some of what I know about them? Do I want to throw it out, like throw it to the wind? Does this file on this person speak about them, or does it speak about the people who made the file? You know, like, where is the kind of the uh, the distinctions being made, and you can make those distinctions. I think that that's kind of the important thing to me, is like you say, go with the flow and not become too concrete in any of your thinking about the situation. Just utilize everything you have. So if I have time to surf someone's website before I meet them, I'm going to do it. If I don't have time because I have too much to do, then I'm not going to beat myself up about it, I guess, you know? I might even say to them, I can't wait to check out your website. And they might say, oh, don't look at that thing, it's horrible. I've had people do that too, you know? So it's really just kind of like it's not a prerequisite, it's more of a approach to life, I'd say. Like, how often do you do your homework before something happens? And then still enter the moment with a sense of freshness. Like, can't, you know, that's how. Does that land with you? Yeah? Does that land with you? Do you feel that, like, a similarity there?
I think it all comes down to how do I approach that homework? Where am I coming from when I'm doing my research? What am I really looking for? Am I looking for how they present themselves in the world? Or what am I looking for actually? And I believe that's important to just be aware of, well, it's the client itself as a human being that's in focus. It's not me. It's not what I believe. It's not what I believe they can achieve. It's about them.
Absolutely. 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 Um, I would say that that's important all the time in life, is that exact thing. Like, when I'm getting to know someone, I'm getting to know them, you know, not what I think of them. Layla.
I think it also dips into that part about that we were speaking to before, where clarity makes prosperity. So if you're looking and doing the extra work that is being described of as, like, say, doing some homework on a person, and I think that also trickles down to what kind of service you're seeking to offer. You know, like, say someone who's doing business coaching, well, maybe they're going to do a lot of homework into like the business of that person, because they got to give, they don't want to waste that person's time by them telling them all kinds of stuff that they could have just scooped up offline. Like, there's that part. It's like, you know, maybe depending on how you're going forward, you're seeking and searching, but no matter what you're seeking and searching or poking around at, you're not making assumptions. Like, it all comes back down to, like, you know, you're still seeking clarity, like you were saying, Neil. It's like, and then you tell them, oh, I'm gonna go look at their website, is that cool or whatever, they're like, oh my God, don't do that. Like, you're constantly, you know, hey, I found you on blah, and it looks like you have 5 kids. That's insane. You know? But then, for example, for me, it's like not assuming that they've had only 5 pregnancies. They could have had 8 pregnancies. There could be miscarriages and stillborns in there that we don't know about, right? So, like, depending on what your sort of Mary Shikun talked about niche. She's really big on niche. You know, what is your niche in your service? To have some sort of, not necessarily like that you have to name some one thing that you always only do, but what is it really that you're creating for people? And then that might sort of spell out what kind of extra work that you might want to do before you do whatever you're trying to do with the person. You know, like, let's say if it's a lover, you know, well, the intention there is to maybe have some fun. So you're gonna think about, I want to get to know, like, is this person diseased? You know, like, you're gonna, depending on what your niche service, what are you trying to create with a person, you're going to maybe go down different avenues of wondering, you know, before you get into something that maybe you did, maybe that is not where you want to be, or, you know, or maybe you've made a whole bunch of assumptions and accidentally, because of what you saw, and then unfortunately that's has nothing, you know, to do with the person. And in, especially when it comes to, I find, just like side note, especially when it comes to the internet, like, if we're doing our extra work based solely on what we can find on the internet, there's, that is 100% needs to not be taken, like, that is a grain of salt in, like, who a person is. And we can all acknowledge that we do not need to place weight, or, you know, I would say almost the same, Ellen, with what other teachers or other schools or other places have reported on. Grain of salt. You know, like, I homeschooled my kids up until 2 years ago, and they're in their second year of public school this year, going into grade 6 and 9. So I lasted quite a long time at home with them. And for them to get their report cards back, grain of salt. Like, I literally would tell my kids every day, I'm like, this does not define you, and you know it. So don't worry, you know. So I love that you're in. And what kind of, by the way, talking about clarity, what kind of teaching do you do? What, are you a grade school teacher?
I work with fourth graders, and now I only teach them in the 3 principles, well-being, the Spark curriculum.
Oh,
Actually,
cool.
I just work part-time 1 day a week.
Cool. Oh, see, so that's beautiful. Then that's even more clarity right there, as to, like, knowing that, of course, you're going to wind up being handed files, because your whole niche or your whole intention is to create, is to ignite, you know, really, with those kids. So that's super cool. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? It's like when of course, when we're going to bring people into our realms, I love that, Neil, that you're bringing this up as like, you got to do that extra work and just really, you know, make people be seen or heard or witnessed, and they're going to feel that value. And also, Ellen, you're totally bang on too, I think, is that it's a grain of salt. And there's sometimes when we don't do that work where it doesn't necessarily negatively impact the relationship we can create with someone. You know, there are moments when you don't do the work, like Neil, you remember when I was on Instagram and I saw that miniature washing machine?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is genius. I'm going to buy it. And I went almost all the way to just, I don't do this, mind you. I hardly ever get sucked into crap. I must have been tired or something. And I
Because
almost went,
we wanted something to wash clothes while we were on tour, that we were like camping
okay,
in between
there was a
gigs.
purpose.
Yeah, we thought it looked really cool and it was very inexpensive.
And
But
then we
decided,
watched this video review. Halfway through the video, the guy does the cycle and the box is practically falling off the counter, and I was in hysterics. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna buy that. So like, imagine if you know, that's a silly example, but like, imagine if I hadn't done my 6 minutes of extra work, you know, we would have had really dirty and messy situations. Anyway.
I like out $80 on me. We're like, wow, it's only $80.
No, it was 40.
$300.
It was even better. It was 40
Yeah,
bucks.
it was
That
ridiculous.
seemed like a damn deal.
It was ridiculous. Yeah, and then we were just like, wait a minute, let's look at at least one review before we.
Yeah.
Which is kind of part of what I was pointing at, was just kind
Yeah.
of this. Not to say that you want to spend your entire life making sure that things are going to be okay and reading
Yeah.
restaurant reviews or something like that, but just that how often does not doing the background work, you know, affect you? Not like having done it and then discarding it, you know? Aha! Right? See? Okay, so we have just a few more minutes. I just want to touch on one last thing in this, which I think is really important. The way that it's said. Which is, I've had many clients who could not afford me, who ended up working with me because they sold something or found a sponsor or benefactor or got a loan, etc. So I learned never to factor in my own estimation of their ability to pay. This is a stumbling block for me. Huge stumbling block. And it's just a continual stumbling block for myself. Whether I disregard it or not. Like, I can also disregard it and just believe that they can pay for it. But it's something that comes up in my mind. Is that I make that choice for them before I let them make that choice. I make it in my own mind. And that, I think that for myself personally, that's a bit of a stumbling block. So maybe if anybody has anything quick they want to say about that, and then kind of whoever would like to have the final word, maybe we'll go with that. No one? Okay. Okay, so great. Let's leave it at that, because I think that's a great thing to kind of like go home with, is how often, like, not only in the estimation of money, because I think that's a big thing, but in the estimation of time and energy and connection, how often do we stand in the way of our own potential prosperity by assuming that other people don't have what we believe is needed in order for the situation to happen? How often do we make that assumption before we just explore it? You know? Rather than, so if we were to go forward into this next week with one thing in mind, it would be, rather than thinking like, oh, I'm asking too many questions, or this person could never pay, or I'm taking too much of this person's time, or that's too much energy for them, or they wouldn't want to do that for me, or, you know what I mean? Any of that kind of stuff, rather than putting that first, being like, how do we make this work? What kind of questions can we ask? What kind of clarity can we gain about the other person to see where they really are or the situation, etc. I think that might be a great exercise. Yeah, can we agree to try that out? Yeah? Okay, cool, great. I feel great to be back. I missed the other one. It was unfortunate. I was very sick. And see the Domino members tomorrow. And for the Hummingbird members, see you guys next week. Tatiana, if you could drop that formula, if you have a video of you seen anything like that, if you can drop it in the Hummingbird Society, that would be really cool. Yeah. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.